Good, you could make our time to join us on today's episode of Tax Matters. My name is Olumuyiwa Matuloko. Tick-tack, like they say, the weeks and the days are rolling by. Another month is on its way out. We hope business is good. Well, our advice is, in spite of all the odds, hang in there. Don't give up. On today's episode of Tax Matters, we are going to tell you two stories. Stories of two events that have the same cord binding them. The first one is the story of the Second International Tax Conference organized by the West African Union of Tax Institutes, WAUTI. It was held in Lagos between Tuesday the 27th and Wednesday the 28th of March 2013 with the theme, The Role of Taxation in Good Governance. The second story is the story of the 127th meeting of the Joint Tax Board, which was held in Abuja on Thursday, April 18. The theme of the 127th meeting of the Joint Tax Board is tackling multiple taxation in the Nigerian tax system, roles and responsibilities of relevant authorities. It always gladdens our hearts to know that the tax authorities are always out to protect the interest of the tax-paying public. And that is why it is good that the menace of multiple taxation is being battled headlong. If we have your interest, then join us for 25 minutes of information and education on taxation. I have Christina Pius with me on this episode.
Hello, viewers. The Second International Tax Conference of the West African Union of Taxation, WAUTI, was held for 2 days, Wednesday the 27th and Thursday 28th of March 2013 in Ikeja, Lagos. The theme was The Role of Taxation in Good Governance. Welcome address was delivered by the Chairman Tax Conference Committee, Ms. Olajumoke Simplis.
The tax conference is one of the many ways through which WAUTI engages in the creation of tax awareness within the economy. This is even more expedient as countries the world over continue to realize the need for cooperation towards achieving their common goals. We believe that taxation has a significant role to play in ensuring good governance.
Then followed a flurry of goodwill messages.
The Federal Inland Revenue Service, on its part, will, in accordance with its Establishment Act, continue to uphold its vision, mission, and core values, geared principally towards creating a service that is performance-driven, constantly meets revenue targets, and is adequately equipped to drive government tax policies. Our collection for 2012 fiscal year, which is in excess of 5 trillion naira, only shows there are lots of opportunities for increased tax revenue. With the right techniques in place and support of all stakeholders in the Nigerian tax system.
In his opening speech, WAUTI President Prince Kule Kodri of Nigeria dwelt at length upon the theme of the conference.
The theme of this year's conference, the role of taxation in good governance, was informed by the contemporary realities of the day. It is not out of place when citizens demand from their leaders good governance that will translate to the socio-economic development of their country. It is sad, however, to mention that many governments in this part of the region have failed to meet up with the people's expectations. The general excuse often adduced for this phenomenon is scarcity of resources in relation to competing needs begging for attention. The plausible question to ask is, how sincere and appropriate are the efforts being made by governments to generate enough revenue that will be needed to meet the expectations and yearnings of the people they govern? The role of taxation in good governance can surely not be overemphasized. Oil may dry up, gold or diamond may get exhausted, but as long as human beings exist on earth and continue to engage in productive activities, taxation shall continue to exist as the only sustainable way of developing the system.
Mr. Salifo Temtori, Director of Customs at the ECOWAS Secretariat, represented the President of the ECOWAS Commission and delivered the keynote address. He spoke in French.
Pour échanger sur un sujet dont l'intérêt n'est plus à démontrer pour nos pays en développement.
In the course of the two-day event, 3 papers were presented by a diverse group of experts and a distinguished crop of discussants. Perhaps a good way to get a good feel of what transpired is to allow the reporter to take us on a tour.
Especially as most of the paper presenters spoke in French.
Yes, quite a number of them.
We started with the first presentation being the machines and laws, and that saves government a lot of resources for development. We took cue from a triangle that he gave, which had at the apex tax administration, to the right taxpayer, and to the left tax advisors. And the idea is how to keep this triangle intact, because together we are all helping to raise revenue for the state. And once revenue has the revenue goes to the state, we expect them to use it for the good governing of our countries. We had discussants, one from Togo, our representative from Togo, Mr. Vincent Kojo Kudo, and he also added his voice to the fact that the institute should be made to manage tax advisors. Then he also mentioned the need for quality of tax advice from tax advisors, and also proposed that we should look at making sure that our various institutes and members take to learning the various countries' languages. We have 2 main, French and English, and he thinks that will help us in our collaboration. We also heard from the second discussant, Dr. Mohamed Diaye from Senegal, and he also mentioned the fact that we should ensure that our multinational enterprises in our various countries uphold ethical values, because they have incentives we've given to them, and we expect that they should also let us benefit from whatever they get out of the incentives that have been given to them, and that the lack of adherence to set down rules to ethical conduct can lead to corruption, and that can reduce revenue inflows to our governments for them to give us the good governance that we very much require. He also mentioned that the discretionary granting of tax incentives should be relooked at and discontinued or amended as the case requires. He also mentioned the need for us to rationalize tax policies in member states, because once we go ahead with WAUTI, we should see tax advisors moving within the sub-region, and with harmonization, should be easier for us to link up. The second presentation was on the topic harmonization of tax systems in the ECOWAS region, perspectives and challenges, which was presented by Mr. Salifu Tiemtori. He asked the question, why would we want to harmonize indirect taxes? And also looked at why WAUTI can help in assisting the ECOWAS Commission in seeing to the harmonization of tax laws. Indeed, he mentioned that to this extent, they've been able to go a long way in the harmonization of indirect taxes with the Common External Tariff, CET. And he also looked at the challenges at harmonization, coexistence of tax laws inherited from the colonial system, making it difficult for us to change our status quo. He also mentioned the existence of 2 institutions, ECOWAS and then WAUTI. So we seem to have a union within a union, and they all legislate on cases, legal documents, and this could lead to contradiction. We had discussions. The president of CITG Ghana, Mr. Mike Kofi Aflu, and now president of WAUTI, who mentioned the issue of the cascading effect of VAT across member states, because different rates are being charged. And he also looked at the fact that revenue institutions should look at the issue of promotions and raffles being conducted by the telcos. You text to 2020 and you win a Jaguar. What is the tax being paid on this? Because it's a gain somebody is making. Unfortunately, he couldn't see the gift tax in Nigeria. We have gift tax in Ghana. So how are we going to tax some of these inflows for revenue? Then we had a contribution from Mr. Biti Adama from Burkina Faso, who also talked about the need to harmonize tax administration and tax systems. And in the discussions, it was raised by participants that we have the African Tax Administrators Forum, which is working on harmonizing tax administration and tax systems. He also raised the issue of harmonizing direct taxes, because from Mr. Salifu's presentation, he heard of only the customs and indirect tax. And then in the discussions, it came to light that the ECOWAS Commission was working on harmonizing direct taxes as well. Then the discussion participants also mentioned the role of ABWA, accountancy bodies of West Africa, in helping us in harmonization. Then there was the third paper, Voluntary Tax Compliance, a Key to Sustainable Good Governance, by Mr. S13E17. He mentioned that payment of taxes is premised on the existence of good governance. Thus, his question is, what happens when you pay taxes and you don't get the good governance? And he raised the issue of the chicken and egg problem. Which comes first? Should we pay taxes to get good governance, or we should be giving good governance and then we pay taxes? And then the discussion started with Mr. Chekna Toure from Mali. He mentioned that tax education can assist in voluntary tax compliance and that we should start early. In fact, taxation should not be a secret subject. It should be open discussion in families, in schools, and then, like the chairman of conference committee mentioned, you catch them young before they grow. Then we had the second discussant, Attorney McDonald Garnett from Liberia. He mentioned the need for taxpayers to know what the tax revenue is used for, and that can help them to comply. He mentioned we needed good laws, and that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. And he advocated for the sanctions regime to be very efficient so that taxpayers can fall in line. But the chairman responded and asked whether sanctions do not re-emphasize the speaker's position that without good governance, what we have is enforced exactions and not taxation. She went on to give statistics which she found absent in the discussions to show that from the table, countries that showed good governance had high tax GDP ratios, as against those that had low GDP ratios.
But prosperity index is looked at in terms of what's the definition of prosperity in a country when you believe what is good governance. So it's defined as economy, economic health, entrepreneurship and opportunity, in this particular instance, governance in the way you are ruled, you feel people care about you, education, health, safety and security, personal freedom, and social capital. And so there's this Legatum Prosperity Index that was published by Forbes, and if you go online, you'll see it, and it ranked 142 countries. And I tried to superimpose those with a higher tax percentage of GDP to where they rank on the Prosperity Index to see whether there was some kind of alignment. And there was, with a few exceptions. And what I did was to group countries into 4. And what I found was that in terms of countries in West Africa, since we're discussing West African countries, 3 of the 15 countries fell in the first group, where the percentage of GDP was below 10%. Guinea at 8.2%, Nigeria at 6.1%, and Equatorial Guinea at 1.7%. Then the group that had over 10 to less than 20% of GDP, you had the most countries in that group. There you have Senegal, the Gambia, Togo, Benin, Cote d'Ivoire, Mali, Liberia, Burkina Faso, Niger, and Sierra Leone. And then the 2 other countries that I have not mentioned, Cape Verde and Ghana, fall in the 3rd category of the 20 to less than 30% of GDP. There was no country in West Africa that was higher than 30%. Okay? So, but remember I'm saying I want to map this against our indicator of good governance. And I used the Prosperity Index as some kind of indicator, where they ranked 142 countries. And guess what? The top 10, with a few exceptions, countries, where do you think they fall? In the 4th category. That is those that have over 30% of GDP. Specifically, you have as number 1 in the Prosperity Index, Norway. Now, what do you find interesting about that? Norway also is an oil-rich country.
So it tells you that having oil does not mean taxes are not important. And then secondly, you have a situation where they collect very high taxes and the citizens have ranked them as one of the most prosperous and how much they feel good. Denmark is also in this category. Number 2 is Denmark.
I wouldn't want to mention the one that ran good in West Africa because I come from there, Ghana. So that you don't say I'm biased. No, I didn't want to say it because they say I'm biased, but Ghana was up there.
Very interesting statistics, very interesting postulation that countries that present evidence of good governance are those that have high tax to GDP ratios, and that high yield from taxes engender good governance. Yes. But some people think otherwise. They believe that good governance is what drives high tax yield. Well, what do you think? We want to hear your views. The links are on the screen.
The highly stimulating sessions were capped by the equally stimulating closing address delivered by the Lagos State Governor, Mr. Babatunde Raji Fashola, ably represented by a special advisor on taxation and revenue, Mr. Bola Sodipo.
So there is nothing we can do. I can't believe this. Last year I let it go. This year my tax assessment is even worse. They keep doing this because they know there is no one we can complain to.
But there is.
Really?
Yes. You can go to the Tax Appeal Tribunal.
Tax Appeal Tribunal?
Yes.
The Tax Appeal Tribunal is established to resolve all tax disputes between taxpayers and the Revenue Authority. So when your tax disputes are not resolved to your satisfaction, the Tax Appeal Tribunal is there to help. You can visit any of our offices nationwide or call us on 0987-61170 or email info@tat.gov.ng for support. Tax Appeal Tribunal, building confidence in Nigeria's tax system.
Welcome back. Time for our second story, and Christina is our guide once again.
The Joint Tax Board held its 127th meeting in Abuja on Thursday, the 18th of April 2013. The well-attended meeting was chaired by the acting executive chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, who by virtue of that position is the chairman of the Joint Tax Board. Several issues dominated the one-day meeting, including tackling the menace of multiple taxation in the Nigerian tax system, which incidentally was a theme of the meeting. Other issues include harmonization of taxes and levies across the tiers of government, tax treaty and exchange of information, presumptive tax for the informal sector, an update on the Taxpayers Identification Number Scheme and the Driver's License and Number Plate Project. To set the tone for discussion on those issues, 2 papers were presented. Mr. Bola Sodipo, Special Advisor to the Lagos State Governor on Taxation and Revenue, presented a paper on Nigerian Tax Environment and Menace or Multiplicity of Taxes and Levies, Lagos State Experience. While Mr. M.O. Bojumbola of the FIRS presented a paper on tax treaties and exchange of information, the role of state boards of internal revenue. At the end of it all, a communique was issued.
The boards deliberated on various issues and reached the following major decisions. 1. The board considered incidents of multiplicity of taxes and levy across the country and resolved to look into it with a view to harmonizing collectible taxes by all the 3 tiers of government through a proposal for the amendment of some of the existing tax laws in Nigeria.
Tax authorities, in conjunction with relevant stakeholders, are to develop presumptive tax regulation for administering taxation of the informal sector of the economy. The board is to intensify efforts towards achieving total deployment of the TIN infrastructures at the various tax offices across the country to ensure full implementation of the project. The board is concerned that some state governments have not enacted laws establishing their boards of internal revenue, granting autonomy, and encourage them to do so. The board resolved to hold its 3rd International Tax Conference from 20th to 22nd October 2013 with the theme Taxation and Development, a Key to National Transformation. We later spoke with the chairman of the Joint Tax Board and the secretary of the board on the issues at stake. On today's theme, tackling multiple taxation in Nigeria, what can be done to curb this menace?
It's not any issue. About 20 years ago, it was a problem which necessitated the then government to constitute a committee to look at the issue of multiple taxation. And the end result was an act to say these are the taxes and levies to be collected by each tier of government. That exercise was done 15 years ago, which calls for a review now. There are a lot of agitations. Based on that, JTB has done a lot by going around the states to document what is happening. And quite honestly, when you see what is happening, you will shed tears. Because it's barbaric, it's inhuman. What is happening on our highways is uncivilized. And then there are a lot of complaints of recent from Manufacturer Association of Nigeria, where the president directed that something must be done. And the National Economic Council, being chaired by the vice president, is handling it. A committee was constituted to be chaired by His Excellency the Governor of Gombe State, Alhaji Ibrahim Dankwambo. And a lot has been done. A presentation has been made to NEC, and they have directed for the next step. And even today at our JTB meeting is an item on the agenda to be discussed so that all the 36 states and federal revenue will buy in and ensure that these things are addressed. At the same time, we need the taxpayers to equally resist some of these things, because if you're asked to pay something which is illegal, you have every right to refuse to pay, to challenge it in the court of law and say, this is not illegal, I'm not paying. I have directed Joint Tax Board to start aggressive public enlightenment in respect of the multiplicity of taxes and levies. The issue of harmonization is all part of the things that we are going to discuss, and whatever is the best for the country will recommend to the relevant authority to handle.
In harmonizing taxes and levy collectible by the 3 tiers of government, there is a government, there's an act. That act came into being in 1998. The act stipulates taxes collectible by the 3 tiers of government, but the content of that act shows that there is need for review and amendment. As a matter of fact, the National Economic Council, where you have all the state governors as member, have already approved recommendation by a committee that worked on multiplicity of taxes. And another committee, a high-power committee, the Ministerial Implementation Committee, has been set up to ensure that those recommendations are implemented. So very soon you will come out with steps to be taken, in form of a roadmap, which will include sensitization workshop, which will include discussions at different fora, all aimed at curbing the menace of multiple taxation.
Thank you, Christy. Viewers, we want to thank you most sincerely for spending time with us on today's episode of Tax Matters. We want you to have a blessed week, but we are enjoying you to stand up for your rights. If anybody stops you to collect revenue from you, whether it is a charge or a levy or a tax, ask him to identify himself. Is he just a roughneck or a genuine representative of a genuine revenue authority? From Christina.
Thank you for watching.
Stay blessed.